this is 13C, American military forces during the Cold War. All right, so President Kennedy, and remember I talked about an inaugural address, right? An inaugural address is the address that a president gives when they're elected. Let me see if I can move this picture out of the way so you guys can see, or at least, you know, move it off to the side here. There we go. That's a little better. But you can see this is his inaugural address. Look at that crowd. Lots of people. And Kennedy pledged to fight communism. Okay? So Kennedy said famously that the United States would pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, in order to assure the survival and success of liberty. In that same address, he famously said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Kennedy is picking up the torch and continuing the fight against communism that has characterized the Cold War. Millions of Americans served in the military during the Cold War. They fought, they were wounded, and they died in conflicts around the world. Some of those conflicts were not very popular. Vietnam was not a very popular conflict. We talked about it. Because of their struggle, the sort of American ideals of freedom and democracy prevailed against Soviet communism. All right, Kennedy, a World War II veteran. So Kennedy was a Navy lieutenant in World War II. He was our youngest U.S. president. He was very popular. He was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas, Texas in 1963. And this sent shockwaves across the nation. It caused significant strife and division, especially as America became further embroiled in the Vietnam War. So this was a very devastating thing that happened to this young president and to the country. So World War II veterans, when they returned home, and I'm going to move this down here. Sorry, these images are kind of covering it up, so it's harder for you to see. When they returned home, they got a hero's walk. But Vietnam, remember we talked about Vietnam, it was a very unpopular war. So in some cases, the veterans faced a lot of hostility and anger because of opposition to the war, even though you should not blame wars on soldiers. You know, soldiers just fight in wars. Politicians and generals are the ones that make wars, right? Vietnam veterans weren't honored for their sacrifices until a long time after the war. All right, we shouldn't blame soldiers for wars because soldiers don't start wars, they don't end wars, they just go and do their duty. All right, so you blame the politicians, blame the generals, don't blame the soldiers. A lot of Vietnam veterans had resources available to them that they didn't know existed because nobody helped them out. All right, and that concludes 13D.